Hi, my name is Daniel Harrell, and I'm going to be talking about R and K selection. So, first of all, what do these terms mean? An R strategist is a species whose population size is governed by what's called its maximum reproductive capacity, which is denoted by the lowercase r, which is basically how much it can grow in a certain time. A K strategist, on the other hand, is a species whose population size fluctuates around the carrying capacity K. Here on this graph, we can actually see a few examples of what would be an R strategist and what would be a K strategist. So an R strategist would be animals like insects, and not just animals, plants, some frogs, some fish who just lay a bunch of eggs, and that's basically the end of their um, career as a parent. They just do not. Some frogs are involved in parenting, but it's mostly just quantity over quality, as opposed to larger mammals who tend to raise their young for a long time, who tend to have a longer gestation period. So these differences in how young are made and raised also carry over into how big populations get and how fast they can grow. Here we can see the differences a little bit better. We can see that our selected populations are in a constant state of increase and then decrease. We can also see that the K-selected population is at the top where it's a little bit more stable. And we'll see why these things happen with both of these, with K-selected and with R-selected populations in the upcoming slides. So here's a few characteristics of R-strategist populations and species. They tend to have many offspring. The individuals themselves are of a very small size. It takes very low energy required to produce these offspring. They tend to live in very unstable environments. That is to say, the weather is very unstable. Abundance of resources is unstable. They reach maturity early on in their lifespan, and they have a very short lifespan. K strategists, on the other hand, tend to have fewer offspring, but they devote a lot of energy into not only forming these offspring, but raising them. So they have very long lifespans, but compared to our selected individuals, they don't reach maturity as quickly in those lifespans. They also reproduce more than once in a lifetime, which means that, say, a female might get pregnant 5 times, as opposed to our selected individuals, which will probably lay a batch of maybe 100 to 1,000 eggs once or twice. So here's some advantages that R strategists have over K strategists. So because R strategists can have so many young, this allows in disbursement to new areas. In some cases where there's been a big change in an environment, this can also help them establish a very large boom in growth due to taking advantage of new resources. This is one of the reasons that our strategists tend to thrive in unstable environments. So advantages to being a case strategist. Because the gestation period is so long, because so much energy is put into making the individual and raising it, you get a much more powerful, much more ready competitor. Something that's gonna basically, as long as the environment's stable, as long as it's adapted to the environment, it's gonna basically be the top predator. So now we can talk about how the environment can benefit or hurt K strategist or R strategist. An example of how the environment can boost the population of an R strategist is, say, after a forest fire. The forest is going to have a lot of new sprouting trees and very vulnerable stems that insects called aphids can puncture and feed off of. They feed off of the sap coming through the phloem of the plant stem. So, after a forest fire, we would expect to see a large boom in growth of the population of aphids. But eventually, those stems will grow hard, those canopies will cover the ground, and there will be less light for weak plants to grow. So eventually, we're going to see a big drop in aphid population. Not only that, but predation is going to grow on aphids because there will be more aphids. Competition will grow as the population grows, and food being less common was already mentioned. So eventually there's going to be a big drop in the aphid population. And this is basically what our strategists go through. They go through booms and they react to unstable environments that way. And then there's a drop and then there's a boom again, depending on if they are dispersed into a location that can take advantage of, or if the environment does something that favors their population. Case strategist, on the other hand, would do better in a habitat that has reached what is called a climax, which would be basically that it can support a small number of species, but it can support them consistently. In the presence of abundant resources, case strategists would also go through a population growth, but it wouldn't be nearly as fast as our strategists' growth. And this would be due to the longer gestation periods, the period of parental care, the longer lifespans, the later maturity. Eventually, though, the population would reach a point where the environment can no longer sustain growth, and that would be its carrying capacity. And this is basically where case strategist populations hover a little bit over, and they're depleting the resources, so they die down a bit because of less food, because of too much competition. A little bit under, and resources grow, so they climb a bit, but they basically hover around this carrying capacity, around this space where the environment can sustain them consistently. So with that, I'd like to conclude my video. Thank you for watching, and please leave any comments if you like below. Thank you.